Never before has the creative director, who's always worn the black t-shirt and black, suit, and tried to be as cool as a cucumber and outward facing, all of a sudden has a screaming kid clawing at his leg and a and a dog running in the background. And
Yeah.
there's a sort of humility in there that has actually been really nice to find that extra connection with the clients that we have.
Welcome to Audio Branding, the hidden gem of marketing. I'm your host, Jody Krangle, and this podcast will discuss just how sound influences our behavior. I generally talk about this in the context of advertising and marketing, but there are other places this is important too. I really feel that it plays a much more important role in our lives than maybe we realize. So let's delve a little deeper. This is the first part of my interview with Hamish Macdonald. My next guest is the managing director of Squeak E Clean Studios, an internationally awarded music and sound company with studios in Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, Austin, Sydney, and Melbourne. He has nearly 2 decades of experience in advertising, production, and post-production, managing and developing post and production companies throughout America, Australia, England, and Asia. He's the executive producer of the top-ranking true crime podcast King of Sting, producer of the critically acclaimed television documentary series for National Geographic and Netflix International, Tales by Light Season 2, and is also the post-producer of the feature film The Mule. He has a firm grasp of the creative and technical aspects of the industry and has a passion for innovation. Invigorated by the singular power of music and sound, Squeak E Clean Studios have strategically built a global team of artists, engineers, and producers and established a connected workflow across multiple time zones to craft culture-defining work that connects brands with audiences. His name is Hamish Macdonald, and you can find more information about him at squeakyclean.com. That's squeak, the letter E, clean.com. I'll also put links to his social media in the show notes. I'm really looking forward to hearing about Hamish's experience with audio branding and advertising in general, because I know he has a lot to share. So settle back and listen in. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today, Hamish. I really appreciate it. I know that you are really busy right now.
Interesting time.
Yeah.
Very interesting time. Yeah.
Yes. Well, you're about to make a move, though, right?
Yeah, so I moved to the States in late February with my wife and 4-month-old son, Oswald, and, managed to time it perfectly that I came straight into the pandemic.
Yay!
Yeah. So that was not exactly in the brochure, the US brochure.
No, they didn't warn you.
But the amazing thing is we've just merged our company, Nylon Studios and Squeak E Clean Productions, about a year and a half ago. I needed to be over here anyway to spend time with the team and oversee the rebuilding, and so it's actually been a really enjoyable professional 10 months since I've been here. But as we see Australia opening up, I'm going to head back home just for a few months, maybe a little bit longer. It'll depend on when I can happily and comfortably fly back to the US and just spend some time with my Australian studios, because obviously we still have Sydney and Melbourne, which are working away wonderfully back down under.
That's great. Yeah. So how did you get into this whole audio thing? I know it's been an interest of yours, but what caused that interest?
Well, I guess I'm a much more roundabout way of getting there in the end. I've always worked in production. I studied film and television at Boston University. I flew over from Australia and had the most wonderful time and loved every second, and was just creatively rewarded by any aspect of production that I was involved with. My dreams of being a director were quashed quite early when I got the opportunity to work with a great Australian director and see how good he was and how my skills were lacking in very many areas.
Oh.
But I seem to be good at picking talent and bringing teams together. And I'm a bit OCD, so I'm quite good at organising things and people. And so I found my way as a producer, firstly in the advertising side back in Australia and in the UK. And then on the production side, at a production company called Exit Films, and then at a animation studio, and then a visual effects studio. But all that while in my career, I'd always been hiring pretty much the same sound designers and composers from this company called Nylon Studios, because to me they were the best in Australia, and I loved working with them, and I was always inspired and surprised, happily surprised by the work they did. And so when an opportunity came for me to take over as MD of Nylon, I wasn't trained as a composer. I wasn't trained as an engineer, but I produced a lot of work, both in the commercial side and the long form side, and spent a lot of time with great, incredibly talented engineers and composers, and I came on board from there. So yeah, I think I came through the back door into the world of music and sound.
Well, nothing wrong with that. I mean, you get to learn how it's all put together. That's kind of the basics of making it work.
Yeah, and I think it's been a help that I know all the other aspects to the chain of production.
Sure.
From the strategy side, going back to obviously advertising, through to the actual visual mediums that I've been involved with as well. And I get the wonderful opportunity just to get inspired by composers and engineers around me, because it's a skill I don't have. And that's a wonderful way to come to work every day.
Yeah, I can imagine. How did that all get into audio branding? I mean, I know you're in the advertising end of things too, but working on audio branding for other companies is another piece of that puzzle.
Well, I guess, we've never thought ourselves as a traditional music or sound house. We've really looked at ways to bring those skills together and then look at the wider needs of the industry and the market, and, bringing that strategy into the skills that we already have internally, creatively and with our artists. But then also, we've really been spending time looking at the psychology and the science side behind it, along with that strategy, and really trying to find that perfect sort of middle ground of where creativity meets science or psychology, and using the best of both those worlds as a benefit for our clients.
Yeah. And so Squeak E Clean now has merged with Nylon, correct?
That's correct, yes. In July 2019, we brought the teams together, which has been a very interesting year and a half. Obviously, bringing creative teams together is always going to have its energizing moments and its difficult moments. But what we found was geographically, it was a very, very easy match, because Nylon was in Melbourne, Sydney, and New York, and Squeak E Clean had a real presence in LA, Chicago, and Austin, with a satellite offering into New York. So geographically, we fit very well, and creatively, our direction fit in that we always had the same goals, which was, at its most basic, to be culturally relevant, to take our brand into that sphere, and to be the best and work with the best at what we do.
So have you guys worked with companies now as a combined entity?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've, as difficult as it is to say, 2020 has been a very strong year for us as a company. The first 5 months of 2019 were very much finding our feet as a newly merged company. But 2020 has been fantastic. We've been incredibly busy. We're busier as a whole than we were as two parts, which was always the goal. And the goal was always to be better as a whole than we were as two parts, and that's certainly been the case.
That's great.
So yeah, it's been a wonderful year in that capacity. Whilst everything else has been pretty horrendous.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to say that it's been a good year for other things, but
No.
Well, rising to the challenge of challenging times, that's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's something that I'm the most proud of, is actually sort of the way that all my studios have been able to work together, and my teams have been able to work together and really support each other through these times.
Yeah.
Which is, that's been my proudest moment as a managing director, is to not only see the incredible work that we've been able to continuously do, but to see the teams really sort of lean on each other and help each other. And because we are in 5-6 different markets, they are sort of surging and falling at different times.
Mm-hmm.
So we really are sharing workloads across all of our studios. We've always lived on the cloud because we are across multiple time zones, but that's really come into its own since the start of March.
Yeah. So you've seen things change then from before COVID and after. And I'm not really talking about the merger now. I'm talking about how you work.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we had always shared jobs, but at this point we share, the majority of jobs. Everybody is at home. Everybody is on the same tools. They're all available. They're all very keen to work in the different markets, and it's been this wonderful sort of joining force of seeing how the market's shifting. All of a sudden, Sydney and Melbourne are going gangbusters, and New York's incredibly quiet because obviously New York was the hardest hit in those early days.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that our New York team was. And to their credit, they were putting on funny filters, and at one point they were reporting like they were newscasters and keeping everybody very, very upbeat. And so, it's those little things that have been really, really important for the company. And clients have been doing their best. Agencies have been clinging on to the productions that they do have and really, really riding them out and making sure that everything is done to the nth degree, which in some capacities has been wonderful because we've got to spend more and more time with them, and you get a little window into their home and their world, never before has the creative director who's always worn the black t-shirt and black, suit and tried to be as cool as a cucumber and, outward facing, all of a sudden has a screaming kid clawing at his leg and a dog running in the background. And there's a sort of humility in there that has actually been really nice to find that extra connection with the clients that we have.
I guess you get to meet all of the pets.
Oh yeah. And my son is no stranger to bursting in on a meeting and causing trouble. Yeah, often with a nappy around, being left behind as he nude scoots across the floor, which happily to say is considered a fun part to a call these days, not unprofessional.
I'm glad that humanizing is becoming more acceptable. That's a good thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Long may it last.
Are you looking for ways to improve your company's or podcast's impact? You'd be surprised how powerful the use of an intentional audio branding strategy can be. Want to know more? I have a free downloadable PDF that gives you my 5 tips for implementing an intentional audio strategy at voiceoversandvocals.com/audio-branding-strategy. That location does ask to put you on a mailing list, just to send you updates on when the new podcasts come out. But if you really don't want to give your email out, I understand. Just contact me directly. My email is all over my website, and I'll make sure you get that PDF without needing to sign up anywhere. If you do sign up, though, you also get access to a resources section called The Studio, where I have videos, white papers, and PDFs, discounts from my guests, and snippets of audio from my guests that no one else gets to hear. So maybe it's worth your while. Totally up to you. And of course, if you're looking for voiceovers, you can get in touch with me about that too. Now, back to the podcast. I'm curious as to, now that you guys are merged, what are the projects that you've worked on that you're particularly proud of?
There are a number of clients and a number of jobs that we've done that I'm super proud of, across all our different territories. I guess the relationships that we've built with some clients and agencies that have been repetitive is a bit of a sign of the times of COVID, in that people are outside of their comfort zone. So they're trying to find comfort in a relationship where they wholly trust your abilities. And, we found that, with clients like Square and HP and Campbell's, we've been able to work with them consistently over the last at least 6 or 7 months and produce some fantastic work that we're very proud of, which has also given us the ability to work with amazing directors like Michelle Gondry and people like that, which is always a bit of fun.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
That is so cool. Yeah. Do you have a process that you go through when you take on a client to figure out what their sound might be?
Well, it's an interesting one in that, we obviously do our best to really deep dive. I mean, if you're talking about obviously being briefed for a music job, not necessarily a sonic branding job, there are so many factors as to how deep you can dive into that client and it's their demographic and their consumer base and their their proposed brand positioning. Obviously, the more time you've got, the more chance you have to do that. Obviously, we do our best to see what recent campaigns have been like, what they're wanting to change up about what they've got in the future, and also really look at ways that we can hopefully make their brand more culturally relevant through our own stylings, because they've come to us for a reason. There are a lot of great music and sound houses out there, we have our own abilities that we are very proud of, and that's what we like to bring into each project.
Sure. Yeah, it seems like the company is very global in spectrum, so that can definitely help a brand to reach more people.
Absolutely. I mean, and obviously music is so subjective. So for us, we have 10 full-time composers across our 6 studios, and we obviously have a plethora of incredibly talented freelancers or permalancers, as some of them are. And so we actually get all of our composers to write on every brief that we get, time permitting, of course, because we know that being as subjective as music is, it might be a different background that one of our composers has that just happens to nail that specific brief. Everyone's inspired in different ways. And so we think, having an array of incredibly talented composers all writing on a project will just bring in some different thoughts outside of what the specific brief might be.
And different people from different parts of the world have different sensibilities when it comes to music. So
absolutely. And
nice way for...
Sorry, I was about to say, and what is their core instrument? I mean, the incredible thing about a lot of the composers these days is that they play every instrument under the sun, and not just on this, not just on their synths. They actually do play multiple instruments unbelievably well. But those that have been taught from piano or from guitar, they come at it with a different sensibility.
Yes.
And so it's wonderful to give one brief to 10 different composers and see what comes in.
Yeah. I imagine it's kind of the same way when you give someone a brief for a visual creation of some kind. It's kind of the same deal, just in audio. Absolutely.
And I think that's one of the interesting things about, the conversation on sonic branding is that, there shouldn't be any difference between really the idea behind a sonic logo and a visual logo. They're just as important, and you find that any company worth its salt has a 97-page visual guideline as to exactly how you can use their logo and what colors and what exact Pantones can they use. Yet when it comes to audio guidelines, very, very few, luckily a few more these days, but very few actually has anything really specific. And I find that really interesting, especially with all the science and all the research that we know about how important music is, and having a multi-sensory experience is over a unisensory experience. You know a lot about this. I've been listening to your podcast, and I think you've been schooled by some absolutely brilliant people, and you seem to know a hell of a lot yourself. So, you know.
That's because I've been schooled. I am learning a ton. Every time I interview someone, I learn more. And that's the fun of it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the thing is that, you know, and that's why, maybe about a year ago, maybe a little shorter than that, you know, we took a backward step and we looked at the work that we were doing in sonic branding, and we said, you know, how can we get better at this? Mm-hmm. You know, we believe we have the best creatives. How do we get the best results and the best proven results? Because again, music is subjective, and if it's a good sonic logo, you still probably won't know for a year or 2 years or 3 years whether it is a really useful tool.
Very true.
You know, and so it was at that point where we sort of went and took that backward step, like I mentioned earlier, and started to include some external resources that were specialists in their area, being consumer neuroscience and psychoacoustics and music cognition and that sort of thing.
This has been part 1 of our interview. I hope you'll tune in next week for part 2. Well, that's the end of this episode. Thanks for listening. And if you like what you heard, why not tell a friend about this podcast? It's available on all the usual outlets. Until next time.